So given a lot of the metal albums I bought that came out in 2021, there are obviously going to be a number of them that I didn't buy for one reason or another. So I'm going to go through 9 of those records. I'm going to talk about why I passed on each and every one of them. So yeah, let's do that. So there are a number of reasons why I didn't buy these albums. Some of them didn't have enough good songs on them to justify the purchase. Others just simply had the band going in a different direction that I didn't really gravitate towards. And some records simply just hated. You know, we like what we like. It's a thing. And speaking of me not liking these albums, I want to stress the me in all of this. Obviously, this is a highly subjective list. This is based on my own personal tastes for the most part. You might like these bands that I don't like. The reverse can be true too. I've done videos of bands that I've loved that other people are like, oh, they're awful. You know what? That's okay. We're all going to like what we like. We're not going to love everything. So remember that in the comments. To save yourself the hassle of getting all worked up because I said something disparaging about an album you happen to like. We all have different opinions and different tastes and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, get over it. That's all I got to say. And also, I'm going to go through these albums in the order in which they were released because why not? All right, let's get to the list. Starting things off with X, or 10. This is the 10th studio album from Artillery, released May 7th, 2021. So a lot of the tracks are sort of typical thrash. They don't necessarily go anywhere. They don't add anything to the genre for me. Also, when they're not in a thrash mode, they're also going in a hard rock direction at times, especially the vocal melodies and the choruses lend to that. In fact, I'm hearing a little bit of hair metal in those vocals, specifically in the choruses. Think Firehouse, think Babylon AD, think Slaughter especially. He sounds like Mark Slaughter singing at times, which is pretty interesting, I guess. An extreme example of that is the song The Ghost in Me. You can really hear it in that song. As for bands that do melodic thrash, I'd kind of rather hear Flotsam and Jetsam, especially when you compare modern releases of Artillery and Flots together. I just think they're doing a much better job of this. So, while I did like some of the material on this album, I didn't like enough of the tracks to justify buying the album, so I passed. Next is the debut solo album of sorts from Charlie Benante. This is Silver Linings, released May 14th, 2021. So first and foremost, let me say that Charlie Benante is an amazing drummer. It almost goes without saying. He's obviously been the drummer for Anthrax throughout their entire history. He's also a main songwriter along with Scott Ian. So some of the favorite songs you might have from Anthrax are probably written by Benante and Ian. Given that, this album is not Anthrax by any stretch. It is a cover tunes album. It is also a lockdown or quarantine album. Charlie basically got a bunch of his musician friends to come in as guests on the album. They did it remotely, so everyone was in a different place. They used the internet to put it all together. I'm not so down on it just being a cover tunes album. I don't like most cover tunes albums, as many of you know. It's also the selection of artists that were covered. It's not metal. I mean, Charlie's musical tastes extend beyond metal. No one's fault for that, obviously. I like things that aren't metal as well. But I'm really not into the artists he chose. U2, Tom Petty, Beastie Boys, Run DMC, Billie Eilish. I think there's a point where you're picking all these artists that are basically going to alienate Anthrax fans, by and large, because most of them aren't going to be into this. So it's going to be interesting to see who buys it. Maybe there will be some Anthrax fans who will buy it because they collect anything remotely connected to Anthrax, but is that a reason to buy an album? It's not enough reason for me to buy an album. There is one cover tune on there. It's a Kiss song, a cover tune of Mr. Speed. Not bad, but I can't justify buying an album just for one cover tune. And is the cover tune that amazing? Whatever. So I'm not going to be buying this one just because. Next is a self-titled album from Helloween, their 16th studio album overall, released June 18th, 2021. So full disclosure here, I really haven't liked this band since the 1980s at all. And over the years, I've even come to dislike the Keeper albums, parts 1 and 2. I'm sure that's heresy for some of you Helloween fans out there. I really only like the early EPs and Walls of Jericho, and that's basically it. And I haven't even revisited those in quite a while, so there's that. This album really is the epitome of what I don't like about European power metal these days. I'm not a big fan of the genre. I like the US variant a lot more. There's kind of this weird combination for me of like goofy Broadway musical and cringy rock opera, and surprisingly, there's some J-pop song structuring going on. I don't think that's necessarily intentional. I think it's what comes out in the translation. Especially in the opening track, Out for the Glory, if you listen to the chorus, in fact, many of the choruses, it sounds like it should be sung by like cutesy Japanese pop girls in skirts. It just has that happy Japanese poppy thing going on. I'm going to make this face just because. And I'm just like, is this metal at some point? I don't even know. Some of the riffs are pretty great, but good riffs aren't enough to keep my attention. Again, I just think this is a very poppy album. I think it's pop music for power metal fans. If you like it, good on you. That's great. I know a lot of you worship this album and you put it on your top 10 lists of 2021. That's great. You should like what you like. Again, I'm just going to stress that anyways. But I'm just not on board with it, so I passed. Next up is The Dark Parade, fourth studio album from Mordred, released July 23rd, 2021. So I do go back with Mordred quite a bit to the beginning, actually. The first two albums have tracks that I liked more or less. I always liked when they were more in their thrash mode. But when they brought other elements in, I was always a little bit iffy about it, especially the hip-hop elements, the DJ scratching thing. Some of the funk was kind of tolerable. There was a lot of funk metal going on in the early 90s in particular, so it was par for course with a lot of bands. But I was always telling myself, even back then, I was like, this band would be really amazing if it wasn't for this, and this. And I'm saying that even more so with this record because those elements are even more at the fore. So there's that. And yeah, I know, that makes me meat and potatoes, predictable, whatever. I'm not in the fancy metal club, so whatevs. And on top of that, the vocals are way too flat in most of the tracks. I think some of that's modern production, but doesn't do anything for me. The lyrics, of course, are socially preachy at times. I'm not really into message music. In my 50s, maybe in my 20s, you could have got me riled up about that kind of stuff, but it just doesn't interest me. I could overlook the message music stuff if the music itself was great, but it just isn't. Gotta say, there is a bit of Mr. Bungle worship going on in this record, but I'd much rather hear Mike Patton and crew doing what they do versus this. I did like the latest Mr. Bungle album, even though it's a collection of demo tracks that they re-recorded. That's even better than this, so that's where I am. This just annoys me. Plain and simple. Next up is Parabellum, the 22nd studio album for Yngwie J. Malmsteen, released July 23rd, 2021. Actually, I should drop the J in Yngwie J. Malmsteen because Yngwie did that himself starting in 2016. Go look at the album covers. It's what's happened. Maybe now he doesn't feel that he needs to separate himself from all the other Yngwie Malmsteens of the guitar world. Yes, I just stole a joke from David St. Hubbins of Spinal Tap. There it is. So at this point, Yngwie is a one-man band. He plays everything on this album, which does make me wonder if he's doing that out of necessity. Maybe no one wants to work with Yngwie and his gigantic ego anymore. I'm not sure. That's a little bit of conjecture. If you're an Yngwie fan, you know differently. Let me know in the comments. But there's that. The vocals on this are done by him, as I said. I really miss the vocalists he had in the 1980s. He had some amazing singers. I mean, he had Jolyn Turner and Mark Bowles and Jeff Scott Soto. It just seems him doing the vocals is a bit of a step down. As for the guitar playing, of course, it is phenomenal. It is Yngwie, after all. But I just wonder if I need yet another album of his neoclassical speed noodling. I don't know. And I have to ask myself, is it a song at the end of the day? And if it's a song, is it a song I want to hear? That's the thing. I mean, 22 albums of noodling, that's great. It's impressive. Am I a guitar player? I'm not. I'm a bass player. But if I was a guitar player, would I still want to hear 22 albums of that? I just don't know. Is one album just as good as the other? And I'm excluding the 80s stuff because, again, you had the powerful singers. I felt the songwriting was way better in the 80s for his band. So there it is. Probably not going to buy this. Just 'cause. Next is Leave a Scar, fifth studio album for Dee Snider, released July 30th, 2021. And I'll be honest here, I did like his previous album a lot more. That was For the Love of Metal. Interestingly, Dee didn't have as much of a hand in the songwriting on that album than he does on this one. This is much more of a Dee Snider album. But somehow it just doesn't gel together. There are a lot of great trad metal elements going on here. It's not consistent, however. And also, I gotta say it, do we really need another lovey-dovey song about Dee's wife? That would be S-H-E on this record. I've never been fond of him doing that necessarily. I know, he's a musician, he can express however he wants, but even as far back as You're Not Alone on You Can't Stop Rock and Roll, it just breaks the flow of the record, so I don't really know why it's there. Production also is pretty modern. You've got a lot of clicky drums and unprocessed vocals, and I'm an old man, so I effing hate that. Past that, maybe with some more spins, I might like this album a little bit more. I don't know. I don't think so. Basically, today is not that day where I'm saying this is a great album. But if you like it, good on you. Next up is Wallflowers, the fourth studio album from Ginger, released August 27th, 2021. Of course. So admittedly, part of my avoidance of this album is the fact that I, relatively speaking, don't like a lot of modern metalcore. I feel like the genre rapidly changed from its earlier days into something I'm not into. So I'm admitting a bias right there. The band is moving into more of a progressive direction with this record. I did find some of that interesting. Not interesting enough to make me want to buy the album, but it's there. Vocals are okay. She moves between aggressive and clean vocals a lot. I like the aggressive stuff from her a little bit more. This is Tatiana. But the clean vocals just don't do it for me on this particular album. I just don't think they work as well. I do like contrasts a lot, though, in some bands. I like aggressive and poppy, but this band doesn't put it together for me. And it's really just a preference thing, you know? So I'm not really crapping on this album. If you love this album, you should let me know in the comments that you like this album and why you like it. That'd be pretty cool, but it's just not connecting with me. So there you go. Next up is Unbearable Influences, the third studio album from Chris Holmes, released September 28th, 2021. So you might have missed this album entirely. It wasn't promoted very well. It's not on any of the streaming services. In fact, I found it on Bandcamp, and there's only a digital version available there, so no vinyl means that this vinyl guy wouldn't have bought it anyways. But in addition to that, this album is really awful. There's subpar production, there's goofy songwriting, the vocals from Holmes are pitchy as all heck. It's pretty bad. It's like Gigi Allen singing for a second-rate version of Wasp. And you might think that's entertaining, but it really isn't. If you're wanting to hear this album ironically, I would tell you that it's not good bad, it's bad bad. Of course, there is one track on this album. It is track 3 that Chris Holmes is not singing on. It's called Playing with Fire. It has guest vocals and all of that. It's better, but it's better amongst an album of complete crap songs, so it's not that much better. And that kind of sucks. And I gotta say this, I love Chris Holmes. Like, his contributions to Wasp, all those Wasp albums he was on were amazing, in part because he's on them. I think his guitar tone's great. I think his riffs are great. And his riffs here are okay. I think they're not bad, actually. But I think the real fault of this record is the fact that he's singing. He needs to stop doing that right now. He needs another songwriter to come in, write better songs. He needs a producer, an actual producer who can produce a record. He just needs other things that aren't him. And I think that would make a much better record. And I'm trying to be constructive here because, again, I love Chris. Loved him in Decline 2. I have every line from that movie memorized with him in it. There's a documentary out on him. I think it's called Mean Man. It's good. I would highly recommend checking that out. But again, this album in particular, Unbearable Influences, is really just unbearable. And there's the most obvious criticism ever. Hack journalism. There it is. But anyways, Chris Holmes, yeah, do better, dude. And I know you can. That's the thing. Next up is Doom Crew Incorporated, the 11th studio album from Black Label Society, released November 26th, 2021. So I'm going to be honest here, I've never liked Black Label Society ever. I think Zakk Wylde is a good guitar player with an unfortunately dated 80s guitar dude name, by the way. Good player. I know he popularized the pinch harmonic in a lot of ways, which I hate because every other band's doing pinch harmonics on their guitar work. Ugh. I secretly blame him, even though it's not his fault. He's a good guitar player, not my favorite of the Ozzy Osbourne guitar players. Randy Rhoads buries him musically and otherwise, and I even think Jakey Lee's better. A very underrated guitar player in Ozzy's band discography, by the way, Jakey Lee. But I've always found Black Label Society just be a really bland band. It skitters on bro metal for me, and I just don't get into it. His playing on this record is great. Again, he's a great guitar player, but the songs are serviceable at best. Just don't grab me. And I'm not the audience for this. I clearly am not. So, bland, boring, Black Label Society. Maybe you like them, though. That's great. Let me know in the comments what you like about them. Why not? And those are the metal albums I didn't buy in 2021. Of course, I want to hear your opinions on these albums because I know some of you love one or more of these records. Definitely let me know in the comments which albums and why, because I actually want to hear more than just my own opinion. I want to hear yours as well, so definitely let me have it, good or bad. Also, let me know in the comments if you'd like to see me do this again next year. I enjoyed doing it last year. This was kind of fun as well. And I know there are going to be some albums in future years that aren't going to make the cut for me. I'd like to tell you all about them, so let me know in the comments if it's of interest to you for me to do it next year and future years. Of course, those of you new to this channel are probably wondering who is this judgmental bastard on my screen. My name is Matt. This is the Accusation Network. I do metal vinyl collecting videos each and every week. I also do videos on modern and classic metal in general. If that sounds like something you're into, you should definitely give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video and others with some of your friends. Why not? That's all for now. Thank you for watching, and ever forward.